Welcome to CMMS Radio, a podcast and general resource for all things CMMS, computerized maintenance management software, from selection to implementation to help you make better choices and have a successful CMMS journey. We'll bring in experts along the way to help us learn more about CMMS, facilities operations, and much more. If you need help with the CMMS project, send a message at cmmsradio.com using the What's on Your Mind link. Suggest a topic, share your CMMS story, or ask questions. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. Today, we're talking with expert guest Peter Funk. He's the National Reliability Manager at Rehrig Pacific Company. We're going to learn about his background, experiences, and journey into maintenance and reliability. We'll talk about CMMS, of course, and why it matters, especially the mobile aspect, to help us all on our CMMS journey. Peter, welcome to CMMS Radio.
Thanks, Greg. Glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm really glad we got to set this up. I've seen some of the interviews you've done on other podcasts, and I know a lot of people who actually know you and know what you do would see you as someone who gets it. And when I'm talking about somebody who gets it, it's about the idea that you've been there and done that, but didn't forget that as you carry forward into this great big world of maintenance management, and reliability. So now, first question I wanted to ask you is, you've gone from machine design to maintenance leadership. You've learned a lot about communication along the way. I want to start with, how did this all start for you, your journey? Like when did these things in your life influence you towards maintenance, reliability, all this kind of stuff, and bring us all the way to today?
Okay. I'm actually going to start in the middle of the story and then circle back to the beginning at some point in time.
Cool.
So I would say that my journey into the technical side of the world, engineering, what have you, started in the 9th grade. I just randomly took a course called Exploring Technology with Mr. Reed, the shop teacher at Governor Mifflin High School outside of Reading, Pennsylvania. And it was the coolest course ever. And he was a super interesting teacher. And a huge influence on the rest of my life. The course was essentially a problem-solving course. So the first day, we had to build some sort of egg drop device, right? But we only had like 3 sheets of tabloid-sized paper and all the rubber cement we wanted to use, right? And then it went on from there. There was always like, here's your challenge, and sort of walked us through the scientific method. But not only do we have to like document the process, we actually had to build the stuff too, right? And then test it as well. And it was a bit of a competition between the classmates and everything. So I spent more time on my projects in that class than anything else, probably for the rest of my high school career. and that was absolutely the turning point where it was like sole focus on engineering. That and my cousin was a graduate from Lehigh University with a mechanical engineering degree. And I always looked up to him, and I liked the lifestyle that he was leading and the type of stuff he was into. So between the two of those things, it pointed me in the direction of mechanical engineering. Now, how did I get into manufacturing? When I went to engineering school, I guess I wanted to design like cars or airplanes or helicopters, something fancy and glamorous, right? And then I talked to some friends who had done internships with, the Lockheed Martins, the Boeings, and it sounded like a whole lot of time sitting behind a desk working on a CAD program, which, don't get me wrong, I love occasionally, but not all the time. And then I had an interview for my second internship, actually, with a company called Kimberly-Clark. We've all heard of them, right? Yeah. I didn't at the time because I wasn't into manufacturing. I'd heard of their products, right? And so I went to this toilet paper factory thinking like, oh, here we go. Toilet paper factory. How interesting can this be, right? And I guess I don't have very good of a poker face. And the interviewer might have seen that I was sort of glazing over while we were going through the questions. And he's like, all right, do you want to go on a plant tour? And I said, yeah, anything to get me out of the office, right? And so we go walking down the production hall floor, and there's these huge paper machines like spewing steam everywhere, and these giant 12-foot rolls of toilet paper, and these machines just with actual rolls of toilet paper flying down the line so fast that you couldn't distinguish one roll from another, just looking like a white snake, right?
They got
And
you.
I just got all of those feelings from those times in that class in ninth grade, solving those problems, looking around, seeing all those problems that I could solve, and the different things that I could get involved in. And that was the bait on the hook. And then through the course of the next 2 internships with Kimberly Clark, I got more experience. I fell in love with the idea that no day is ever the same as the next. Every day is a bit different. And there's so many different levels of interaction with people, with technology, you name it. It's just such a wide realm of possibilities, that, yeah. And manufacturing was for me from there on out. And then after college, I got a job with a steel mill in Pennsylvania. It's actually the steel mill where my father was working at, and my grandfather had worked at before him, and that sort of softened the blow for a young college kid coming into the manufacturing world, because my dad was an operator, and so the other operators on the floor kind of looked out for me and steered me in the right direction, and helped me out, and I think I felt more comfortable than maybe your usual college engineering graduate, interacting with them and asking questions and looking for advice. So that definitely started me off on the right path.
That's some of the coolest things about your story is as you're telling it, I'm flashing back to things that I've seen or people that I admired growing up. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about the engineering, the mechanical engineering. So when I think about engineering, there's mechanical, there's electrical, there's civil, and on, and it keeps going. And when I was growing up, there were some little bit older kids in the neighborhood. They weren't really kids. Once I started kind of learning what they do, they were studying engineering, or some of them were already engineers, like their older brothers. And this one guy would work on his cars, but he was also an engineer. So while we were working on his car together, and he's trying to teach me things about building hot rods and all this stuff, we're also talking about what he does at work with designing the systems for the production. And I always see like the way the mind is working and what you're so interested in wrestling with and solving. And I love that passion. I love that it started in high school, because it's something I talk about with this really concerning skilled trades gap that we see. I don't see anywhere near as many high schools as I think should have, bringing back the shop classes and the things where you can get this exposure like what you had. So that was one of my favorite parts of your story so far. So having all that experience, and now we definitely know you've got a lot of experience with deploying CMMS platforms, computerized maintenance management software, for anybody that doesn't know what that stands for. And I wanted to ask you one specific thing, is something I've been wrestling with lately, and I tend to keep it general. I want to ask you, how do you communicate the value of a CMMS to your team? So I want to do a two-parter. I want to know how you communicate the value of a CMMS and why you're getting it with your teams. And then I want to follow that up with, how do you communicate that value to leadership?
Yeah. So in deploying a CMMS to my team here in Kansas, what we looked at is a way for them to essentially document what they do. Right? It's everyone's concern about their legacy. What's going to happen after I leave? And the as you just mentioned, our technical workforce is aging. And how do we upskill those other people? How do we transition what took this person 25 years to achieve and to gather through the school of hard knocks? How do we pass that on without having that same opportunity for 25 years for the people following behind them in this sort of lagging period between the two generations, right? And what we found with a CMMS was a very easy and user-friendly way for our technicians to document what they're doing. And And what we found in practice then is those technicians got a huge sense of accomplishment, not only from doing the work, but even more so when a young tech would come up and be like, "Hey, I got stuck on machine number 2 last night, and I looked up this work order that you did, and I just want to say you did an awesome job documenting that, and I got through the problem, really easily because of that. Thanks, man." That's even more of a buzz sometimes than actually fixing the problem yourself, is teaching someone else how to do it.
Yeah.
So it's difficult to carve out that time to do that, to sit down and be like, okay, we're going to write a procedure on how to do this. But when you can integrate that information exchange into the course of actually doing the thing that you're documenting, it's so much easier for everyone. So that was the number one sell. Number two sell to the team is, we can't explain some of the challenges that we have to upper management by just saying, this machine's great and this one stinks, we need to get rid of that one. Because this one there may be something very wrong. It may just be aged out. I don't know, right? But unless we have some sort of hard, concise data that we can take and say you spend 5 times more money keeping this machine over here running than this machine, so therefore we need to make an investment in this machine, right?
Mhm.
That conversation happens so much more easier with data backing you up than saying, gosh, I really, really, really want to spend this money. Please believe me.
So these are two things so far that you're talking about that are kind of at the heart of the matter, and really, because sometimes teams are very resistant to this change, and they might think that it's to keep an eye on me, it's just another thing that I have to document. But when you communicate that value, that
Mhm.
hey, not only are you going to have information, documented processes and procedures, and the nuanced approaches that you don't get from the manufacturer as to how this machine operates in our environment and the way we leverage it, you're going to do a couple of extra things, or you're going to skip this part, not skip, but like alter the
Yeah.
PM or the repair or even the demand response. And then you add to that, now, guys and gals, we're documenting everything. So when we're working too much on that machine and we all want to do great work, we know we could spend more time on these things or that line. Now leadership has the documentation, because something I learned, it was last year, was that if it ain't written down, it didn't happen, which we kind of all know, but you got to reinforce that. And now you've got that substantial data, the real story, what really happened, when, why, where, who, what was it, to say we need to replace this machine, or maybe even things like we need to add some headcount. And
Right.
if you have that, now you can start turning the corner. And then, is there a third thing, or are we going to transition now into how you communicate the value to leadership to say, hey, let me go and get this CMMS?
Well, you sort of teed off on the third thing, and that's communication. Communication, interaction. Oftentimes, in several manufacturing scenarios that I've worked in, there's been a little bit of a conflict between production and maintenance, a bit of the blame game going on, finger pointing, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's fun and jovial. Other times there's a serious side to it, right? Uh, what I found is that the key to that rub is a lack of communication. And production gets frustrated because they don't have a clear communication path to the maintenance team, right? And the maintenance team doesn't have a way of recording that communication in a way that they can get to that. So what happens is you have a maintenance person who's walking past a machine, and that operator grabs that maintenance person by the shirt and says, "Hey buddy, I've got this issue over here. Could you help me with that?" And he says, "Absolutely, I totally want to help you." And he's totally sincere about that. But I've got something else that my boss wants me to work on over here, and I'll get to that after this. And then what happens? You forget about it, right? Like anyone would. And it's, everyone wants to do the right thing, but because that communication system doesn't exist, those disconnects happen and people get frustrated. Oh, maintenance never listens when we talk, right? Oh, we tell them about this stuff all the time and nothing ever gets done. Well, things are getting done, right? Things are getting done. It's just not necessarily what you had asked for because it didn't make it to their list.
Right.
So we wanted a way to formalize that communication and open those lines between production and maintenance. So with the CMMS, and a CMMS with a nice user-friendly request portal where we can have anyone go in there and enter a request in, and it'll get sent right over to the maintenance team for them to process and prioritize. And then so that way the user can track that through the system. It makes everyone feel like their voice is heard, and it increases that continuity and that relationship between the two major teams within the manufacturing site.
It's a big deal because the it seems like such a small and minor thing, but we only have so much capacity to remember what this guy or gal told us as we're going to do what our boss asked us to do. Something else comes up, and then it gets deprioritized through our natural schemas. It's not that we wanted to forget, and then now you've got this documentation, but pulling, like for years I've said this, if you can just keep people involved, and when this happens they know about it, they don't have to come find you, they don't have to chase you down on the plant floor or anything like that. It just improves everything. And the other thing is there's no more debate because everybody's following the protocol of recording that they requested something, they reported something, I received it, I told you that we're waiting for 2 parts and it'll be done on Wednesday or Thursday. And now a lot of that stuff that can boil up and just cause a lot of miscommunication, uh, disappointment due to expectations, that goes away. It really gets
Yeah.
subdued. And I think it makes teams and organizations overall move better. So, how does all of this then, when we switch it over and say, how do we get leadership to let us actually acquire the type of a system, a CMMS, that we need to do great maintenance and achieve reliability? What do you do there?
It's the same conversations, right? If you're in a leadership position and you're not concerned about the flow of information between your teams on the floor, then we need to look at things, and we need to ask some bigger questions. If you're not concerned about the skill gap that's occurring within our technical teams, then you're not looking at what's happening in the job market. If you don't feel the need for more data about how your money is being spent in probably some of your most expensive work centers, then what are you doing on the management side? Those should all be key concerns. So the sales points are the same, really, just with different points of emphasis. Um, but I wanted to circle back to something you just said. It made me think about this. Um, I knew we turned the corner with our CMMS implementation, and by a greater scale, our reliability cultural shift, when I saw a work order come in that said, my machine doesn't sound right. When we had an operations person, probably wasn't there for more than a month or so, just going, gosh, this thing, it doesn't sound like it did yesterday, right? And they were engaged enough to notice that, and they felt like their voice would be heard enough to take the time to put that into the system. And you know what? The first one of those that came through, we found a blown out motor coupling, swapped that, and got back up to running. Had we not found that at that moment, it could have cost us a whole lot more money. So it
So
was just such a huge win. Such a
that's
huge win.
and it happened early, and it happened at the right time to
Yes.
substantiate that the value you had communicated, and then you move forward, and then you started the deployment, and then somebody used it in a way that made an impact. Now everybody can just kind of, oh wow, that's how that actually works when it's done right and people
Yeah.
actually buy in. And this is why everyone, this I wanted to ask Peter about this, because when people have successful programs in their organizations, they had to start somewhere. They had to get buy-in from their team and from their leadership. And then now you're reminded of this kind of pinnacle moment where it got substantiated even more. So now
Yeah.
everybody knows, okay, this is going to be a part of our process moving forward because we just averted a huge potential cost. And that's the name of the game when we talk about reliability at the end of the day, right?
Yes.
We want to prevent breakage. We want to prevent unplanned downtime and comprehensive disruption of the entire organization, because everybody thinks, well, it's just that machine on the production floor. And it's like, well, wait a minute, this is connected to the whole business. I want to ask you a different question. This is why I say it all is. So is this exactly how you move maintenance from the cost column to the revenue column within an organization, like tying maintenance to the business in a way that the leadership doesn't see it as a cost?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I had to think about that for a moment. 'Cause I don't really think about maintenance as potentially a revenue, but in some ways, yes, you're absolutely right. Case in point, by reductions that we've done in terms of unplanned downtime, and also um, opening up efficiencies and being able to run machines faster, we've actually been able to hold off on ordering new machines to increase capacity. So in that way, yes, your reliability teams, your engineering teams can be more than just a cost center.
Right. And then with what you were just saying, this is where we can tie maintenance and reliability best practices as documented through not just the CMMS, but taking those human activities and documenting them. Now we've got a direct connection to throughput, which is a direct connection to profitability, which means maintenance, in fact, in this specific example, is a revenue driver.
Yes, correct. Yes.
So instead of a cost to have maintenance personnel, best practices, regular training, and a CMMS platform, I would say, I don't know if I'm right, but I would say one argument is that your CMMS and your people and your process are investments, not costs. Because let's just give them all a half day off tomorrow, but unplanned. They're just all going to call in tomorrow morning. You're going to have a tough time recovering from that. It's going to take a long time to recover from that. So you're investing by bringing this technology into the people in the process. So I love the way that you explained it, because it doesn't just fit nicely. It tells the actual story of what people can do on this journey if they can kind of get off on the right foot. And by the way, everybody, if you're not off on the right foot, don't panic. Just call somebody, reach out to me. I know a ton of people that can just 15 minutes, they can say, oh, okay, go look over here and here. You'll be good. And it's not an easy button, but there's a lot of people that care about maintenance and reliability like you do. And that's cool. So I want to switch it to trends, like concerning trends and exciting trends. So, right now, in our overall world of maintenance, reliability, we've already touched on one concerning trend, and that's the skilled trades, the skilled labor gap, the fact that we've got people retiring, heading off to, do that segment of their life, and the knowledge goes away with them. So aside from that obvious one being a really big concern right now, are there any other trends that are happening or that you see coming that you're worried about when it comes to the overall maintenance industry?
Nothing that really worries me per se. I am excited about uh, inclusion of technology in the maintenance realm. Um, it is a bit concerning as far as how big and how quickly that market's grown.
Hmm.
Just a quick cursory walk around to any expo that's related to manufacturing or reliability, and it's hard not to trip over a booth with IoT that's written on it somewhere, right? And
Yeah.
so for us practitioners, it's challenging to determine who's going to be there for the long run. Who's going to make it through this initial explosion of this new technology, right? And who's going to be your partners long term. Because when I'm selecting people to do business with and people to assist us in our journey, I'm looking for someone who's going to be in it for the long haul.
Yeah.
Uh, I don't want to be investing in something and then investing in the new thing the next year. I want to get in and ride the path together.
What you just described is, to me, one of the most basic elements of what reliability actually looks like, is when you do things that are about the long game. Because maintenance and reliability best practices, you already mentioned the book, you mentioned Ramesh. I know all the guys over at Reliability X and the girls. It's when you play that long game and you're not doing these quick fixes and these band-aids. Now you're playing properly in the reliability space. You're going to be on that path. So when you choose technologies, just like our personnel, we want them to be with us for a long, long time, or be in a position to leave us in a better state of existence as they move on to different careers and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And we wouldn't want our technology companies going away. I mean, one of the scariest things is to find something that works and then there's some change. Like maybe they don't go out of business, but they stop doing a certain aspect of what made them great because of financial constraints. And that's always concerning. So I think I think it's a wise play. Is it fair for me to call that part of reliability best practices is choosing people to work with that are going to really be there long term?
Yeah, I would say that's fair.
Okay. Okay. Now, as far as further things on the horizon, anything you're super excited about, like that is happening now or that's coming that you're kind of looking forward to? I think you were already kind of dancing around it where with this AI, machine learning, sensor monitoring, when it really starts to make actual sense and it's not
Yeah.
just the new shiny thing, that's something to be excited about.
Yeah, absolutely. It seems like there's a grand democratization of vibration analysis. I know I dabbled a bit with vibration back in a previous career, and it was daunting at that time, and it was intensive, right? And so for companies of various scales to roll that out, it's sort of inaccessible. So with new technology coming on board, and even things beyond vibration, new technologies that we're getting more and more into the predictive state, I'm really excited about that and looking forward to try some things. We've initiated several pilots amongst our various plants to just go out there, explore, and sample what's available to us to kind of figure out who is going to be there long term with us.
Yeah, and I've speaking of the predictive maintenance approach, I've learned a lot about it. Long way to go, and I like when that comes up because apparently the primary kind of advent or application of prescriptive and predictive type maintenance comes from different industries and then gets adapted to other industries. And so to have people start wrestling this down and actually making it highly impactful and useful, that should make it more accessible, right? Because costs might come down. You get better practitioners that really understand it in the new spaces, and then it can really be applied. I think it relates a lot to maintenance maturity as well within your organization. Like if you're, let's just pretend we're on a 5 level maintenance maturity model. Maybe it's 10, maybe it's 12, whatever, right? So we got 5 levels. If you're at level 1 or 2, you're not going to level 4 or 5. You're going to level either 2 or 3. And it has to be that way. You cannot leapfrog because it creates too much of a gap. So I think that's interesting technology to keep an eye on. I think there's a lot that's going to come up in the next 6 to 12 months because we're moving so fast. And some players are going to be maybe more fringe type solutions where,
Mhm.
yeah, you could do some stuff here. It'll help you out a little bit. But there's going to be a few out there that go much deeper and actually have the real solution. So
Yes.
it'll be interesting to watch and see. I know there's a lot of activity, like you said, at the conferences and the trade shows. And what's fun for me sometimes is when the mic's not on and we're really talking and kind of learning. And what I hear is similar things where people have their concerns and their excitements, and they're like, I'm waiting to see who's really going to be the 3 or 4 or 5, 6 like front runners that get it.
Hmm.
So that's pretty exciting. Now we're going to switch to the fun segment. You ready?
Sure.
All right. Fun question number one. And this is just for us to have some fun. People can get to know you, and it's got little or nothing to do with maintenance. But then again, I'm always trying to spin stuff right back.
Yeah.
So,
Well, hey, before we get there, I did come up with one more concern, and it does relate to the proliferation of the IoT and AI field.
all
Uh,
right.
the the one thing that we're trying to protect ourselves from as we explore these different technologies is the proliferation of apps. I
Mm,
I really dread the day where our techs have 10 different apps on their phone that they have to go through to get to the information they need or get the work done that they want to do. So we're trying very hard to centralize and solidify so that we're not jumbling through all these different apps, like flipping through cable TV channels, trying to find out what we want to watch. So that is a concern in this space, for sure, and something we're trying to protect ourselves from.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that's something people need to hear, because I think they have the same concerns, and by hearing this, they might realize that they do and that they should. I love that add-on. Fun question time.
All right, let's do it.
All right. First fun question. What is your favorite music?
My favorite music, by far, I would say the Grateful Dead. However, I listen to everything and anything in all genres, but I always judge that by like, what can I put on at any point in time doing anything, and I will enjoy it. It's the Grateful Dead.
All right. That works. And it's not that I haven't heard that one, I don't think, on the podcast yet, but it's important because plenty of people are going to be, yeah, me too. All right. Next fun question. What is your favorite sport or hobby? It can be both. And on the sport, it doesn't have to be one that you play. It could be one that you like to observe, you like to, kind of support. So favorite sport and or hobby.
I got so many hobbies, but right now I'd have to say it's snowboarding. We're just coming on the heels of the season right now, trying to squeeze a couple more days in this winter before everything wraps up. So yeah, winter, it's snowboarding. We do a little rock climbing and mix in some mountain biking in the middle of all that as well. So those are my three main passions there.
Yeah, those are some good ones because they're all linked. They're linked together very, very nicely.
Yeah, right. They all relate to mountains, but I live in Kansas.
Interesting. What's going on in Kansas? All right. Here's the final of the fun questions that we use to move towards the end of the episode. This one, there's no wrong answers here. So what is your philosophy or perspective on work-life balance?
Work to provide yourself with the opportunities to live the life you want to lead.
All right. Well said. I like it. So we're not going to drop the mic quite yet. I want to let everybody know you can find Peter Funk on LinkedIn. It's Peter, Peter, last name Funk, Funk. And you can connect with him, start your own conversation. That's the best way to get in touch with him. And of course, Peter, I want to thank you for this awesome conversation and finally getting to have you on CMMS Radio, man.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thanks, Greg, for inviting me.
Absolutely. Anytime. We'll do it again in the future. And thank you.
Sounds good.
Did you find this episode helpful? Please send us some feedback, suggest a topic, or ask a question. Reach out to CMMS Radio if you need a co-pilot on your CMMS project. Visit cmmsradio.com and use the What's on Your Mind link. Thank you for tuning in to CMMS Radio, your resource for all things CMMS, from selection to implementation, to help you make better choices, learn from industry experts, and have a successful CMMS journey.